If you've been alive for the past while, you've probably heard of the game Elden Ring. This game is ridiculously difficult, with bosses that take you between 20 and 200 attempts each. However, there is one boss in this game, one adversary that surpasses all others. One enemy whose difficulty is rivaled only by 2 or 3 others in a game, with over 100. This boss most likely still haunts some players to this day. Hidden in the roots of a tree that is hidden behind a land, hidden by a grand lift and a secret medallion. Her name is Malenia, Blade of Miquella.
And I have never known defeat.
While I'm not the best at beating this boss consistently, that title goes to a man who's been dedicating his entire in-game self to beating Malenia, I have played the game for a long time. I have also been fighting Malenia many times. As such, over the course of my boss fights with her, I've gathered knowledge. I know how she attacks, and I know how to dodge. I'm just not perfect. Join me today and learn how to defeat Malenia, Blade of Miquella and Goddess of Rot. Oh, and I'm also going to be shitting on the waterfall dance design a bit at the end, stay tuned for that. Let's start with the most basic sword swings, shall we? Why? Because they're the most simple. Just dodge backwards. Very simple counterplay. The reason for this is that Malenia doesn't have very high reach on her blade. You can very easily dodge backwards 3 times. After this, she'll simply swing her blade and miss. Eventually, she might cancel her combo by just stopping dead or dashing to the side. She also has a finisher move, however. If you see her do an uppercut with her sword, prepare to jump attack. Every time after this uppercut, she does a slam. This slam has unexpected reach, by the way, so if you were just outside of the reach of her previous attacks, you'll have to iframe this one. When you've done that, you can attack her. Also, do a jump attack! Malenia has one weakness that makes her beatable. She's weak to poise. Incredibly weak. Except for some non-cancelable attacks, she will always stagger when hit. On top of that, if you're using a pure strength colossal sword weapon or weapon build, you can simply jump attack her, and if you do it 3 times without waiting 6 seconds between each one, you'll poise break her, giving you a boatload of damage. So that does it for general offense strategies and basic attacks. This is where things get a bit dicey. Malenia's special attacks are a bit more deceptive than her basic swings. Let's start with the most common one, rapid prosthesis slices. Here Malenia shortens her blade, indicated by a clink and a couple of particle effects at her hand, dashes forward and slices you 3 times in quick succession, before lengthening her sword again and doing a finisher attack. This move can single-handedly munch up your entire health bar like a gourmet munching up a foreign meal. Very quickly! The counterplay to this one is a bit weird, although still easy if you make it a habit. You have to dodge into her attacks, to her right or left, and then walk backwards or dodge if you end up too close to her. The reason for not just dodging backwards is 2 reasons. Number 1, unless you're very far away, Malenia will be on top of you. One dodge, which is all you have the time for before she does her flurry, will not get you far away from her attacks to dodge them all. Nor do your iframes last long enough. You will always be clipped by the last hit if you dodge backwards, unless you're far away. Another reason is that she can delay the last hit however she wants. She may do a really fast finisher, or she'll charge it up and bait you into dodging prematurely, catching you in her finisher while you're recovering from your dodge. This gets solved by dodging past her. If you do, you'll be out of her hitbox for sure for the 3 slices, and the first slice can be dodged by walking out of its range instead of having to time the iframe, which means predicting if she's delaying it or not, which is basically just guessing. Unless she delays her slash by a lot, you cannot retaliate too. You should remember that. You can retaliate when the slash is delayed a lot, but otherwise not. Next up is her second most common special, the lunge. Uh-oh. Fudge. She jumps into the air, clicks with her sword, and leaps toward you with ridiculous damage. This move is mostly used by Malenia to catch you healing, so don't heal when she's up close. The timing is fairly simple though. Just dodge the attack by waiting a short moment. This move has enough end lag for you to retaliate too. Next ability, Uppercut. She stands still after having clicked her sword, then uppercuts and follows up with another slash. If you're using a fast weapon, you can easily squish in an attack before the uppercuts, and I recommend you do, so as to not dodge too early, because the uppercut is incredibly delayed. This move can also be punished, just like the lunge. The last of Malenia's sword-altering moves is where she clicks her sword, dashes to you, and swings her sword before slamming it into the ground. After the second hit, she can also be punished. You should remember the timing of this attack too. Malenia clicks, and as soon as she's on top of you, you have to dodge. After that, you can simply spam the button to dodge the last swing. Other than that, she can run to you and kick you, which does low damage but has ridiculous stun. This means that you should avoid it, since she sometimes decides to true combo this kick into a combo uppercut, not the special version, and then slam, meaning that the best case scenario is you lose almost all your health, and the worst case scenario is you get stressed from the high damage, dodge too early for the slam, and then get roll caught, losing all of your health from 2 blunders. Other than that, she also has an impale. This is an almost guaranteed one-shot grab if you fail to dodge it. However, the actual grab is fairly easy to dodge. If she's up close, you can easily just dodge the grab. Just remember that she does a bit of a fake out with her animation. So that does it for Malenia's moveset. It should be noted that Malenia regenerates a modest amount of health each time she lands a hit on you. As such, using Spirit Ashes or shields aren't that optimal. You should use the dodge to avoid being damaged. That's all, really, so I guess I might as well conclude with my opinion on whether this boss is fair or not. Ready? Let's get go! Oh, right. That. Waterfowl dance is a big issue that can be a whole mountain to get over alone. In this attack, Malenia jumps into the air for a moment, before leaping toward you in a massive flurry of hits. After that, Malenia takes a quick break before releasing another quick burst of slashes. Finally, Malenia jumps into the air and flies over you while slashing, before looping back toward you again in a torrent of more slashes. When Malenia finally stops slashing, she sends out smaller slashes into the air that materialize as hitboxes after a moment. That's a lot of slashing! So what do? Well, the first flurry is the big problem. It lasts so long that iframing through it doesn't work. You also cannot rely on running away, as she starts the attack with a massive dash toward you, and she matches your speed while in the flurry. If you're really far away, you can run away from her, so you can also plan ahead. She always uses the attack at around 70% of her health bar. So this means that when she reaches this area of 60 to 70% of her health, you can start to run away from her and start baiting her with projectiles or just running just outside of her range. If you do, eventually she'll jump into the air and you can dodge backwards, or run backwards, dodging the first flurry. However, sometimes she decides to be stubborn and not use it, so you eventually go in for damage and she only uses it when you're up close, meaning that running away is not a reliable strategy, or consistent strategy. As such, we're going to use the shield. While the shield lets Malenia regenerate a lot of health and also requires about 150 stamina with a great shield, it allows you to stay alive, which is a rather big positive. I think the total amount of stamina required is actually 130, but the thing is that requires your stamina bar to be completely full, which most likely isn't what it's going to be, since you've most likely been attacking her for a while before she uses it. So you should probably keep about 150 stamina with a great shield and not attack too often when you approach this barrier. Otherwise you would need even more stamina to block this first flurry, and you absolutely don't want to be guard broken. So get a ton of endurance for this boss if you're gonna use a shield against its attack. You can also use the Bloodhound's Step, Ash of War, to dodge the attack, although I have never done so for myself and recommend you look elsewhere for that information, because I haven't practiced with it at all. You can also do a weird thing where you run around Malenia until she loses her lock on of you. Bosses also lock onto the player, just like the player locks onto them. However, if you run back behind her, she won't be able to see it. The problem with this is that it is incredibly difficult, and you don't have much time to make it work properly. Another option against this attack is the Freeze Pot, which can cancel Malenia's attack entirely, although this is a consumable, so you'll be forced to farm this for a long time. Whatever you choose, you will eventually have to deal with your other flurries, unless you choose the Freeze Pots. The second flurry is short enough to iframe through it, so simply dodge it. After this, Malenia will fly over you, but will still reach you from above. Here you need to dodge toward her, assuming that you're a bit away from her, and backwards if you're right next to her. After that, Malenia will loop back and keep slicing, so dodge backwards to avoid the final part of this flurry. Okay, now we're done. With all the information about how to beat her, I'm going to rant about whether I think this boss is fair or not. So, this was a short conclusion to the moveset part. Enjoy this transition to black as we get going.
Wait.
Yeah, that wouldn't be too easy, wouldn't it? Okay, don't ask why she's naked, let's just talk about the second phase. And oh boy does the difficulty ramp up. It doesn't increase by a lot, but still, we're dealing with a more powerful Malenia. It's going to be incredibly difficult. The main reasons for this are, number one, she actually runs now. Take a look at this clip. I get hurt and run away. Malenia does not chase after me, she just walks slowly and lets me take a breather. Now look at this. Here, Malenia decides to run after me, trying to catch me. In her second phase, the Goddess of Rot decides to run much more often, giving you less room to breathe and less chances to heal if you mess up. Number 2, Malenia now has new attacks, obviously. So let's talk about those. She has 2 new ultimates, and all her slams now have a bonus Rot Vortex attached to them. On top of that, some of her old moves, mostly the lunge, can link into her new jump attacks. So in these jump attacks, Malenia leaps into the air before either slamming the ground, swinging toward you, often linking into rapid prosthesis slices without the dash, or swinging toward you and turning back before trying to stab you. That's a very long sentence. This version of rapid prosthesis slice that you see should be dodged by rolling backwards, since she doesn't close the gap between you. So dodging into her is just going to put you inside of her slashes. It also can't be punished unless the finisher is delayed. Something that has never happened for me, so you most likely won't be able to punish this. The slam can be punished, and you have a large window for it too. And the double hit can also be punished. Remember to dodge into the blade when she stabs, otherwise you'll dodge into the hitbox in a manner similar to the crab. As for the ultimates, let's start with the Scarlet Aeonia. This is Malenia's opener for the second phase, where she jumps into the air, charges a boatload of Scarlet Rot before charging into the ground and exploding in an enormous Scarlet Rot flower. You can't simply learn the timing to dodge the attack by brute forcing the learning method, just watching YouTube videos or just doing it yourself. However, there are a couple negatives to this. First of all, you have to run backwards after that to make sure that you aren't too close to her when the flower actually explodes. If you are too close, you will die immediately. And if you are too close and dodge the actual explosion, even then you'll still most likely take some tick damage from the flower, from being inside of the flower. So there is a trick that I can teach you that will make this attack way easier to dodge. If you run around Malenia before she lands, you can do the weird target lock disruption like with Waterfall Dance. The reason I recommend you do it here is that it is much easier to master. If you do want to do this, you simply need to walk backwards when Malenia drops from the sky. Afterwards, use the time the flower remains active to apply whatever buffs or recover whatever health you want, if you want to. This attack can also be punished, and you have a large window for it. Now for the tricky one, the Scarlet Phantoms, I think. In this attack, Malenia jumps into the air with a Scarlet Vortex below her, and sends out 4 phantom clones of herself, but they together attack a total of 6 times. Finally, she deals the finisher stab herself, dealing major damage and most likely 2-shotting you, or 1-shotting you, and possibly comboing into the next phantom. Needless to say, you don't want to get hit by this. The big issue here is the 3rd and 4th phantom. They attack so quickly in succession that you can't dodge both of them with 1 dodge each. As such, you must dodge the first 2 normally, then dodge toward Malenia. This iframes you through the 3rd phantom and causes the 4th phantom to miss. The first and second phantoms now come back, and here you need to learn the timing. They both consecutively attack you before Malenia charges at you. Oh, and also don't enter the vortex, you'll die. Anyway, that's all moves covered. Now this last factor for Malenia's difficulty being increased is not really as bad as the others and barely affects the difficulty in actuality, but it is very funny, so I'm going to mention it. So, you know how in her first phase Malenia had this waterfowl dance attack? Well... and it has Scarlet Rot build-up too. For this reason, you should probably bring a seal and the incantation Flame Cleanse Me, since it stops you from just flat out losing a run to her Scarlet Rot. You don't have to bring it though, since even in her Goddess of Wrath phase, Malenia doesn't really rely on her Scarlet Rot that much. Finally, everything has been covered. Now let's talk about whether this boss is fair or not. For real, for real. Honestly, I think Malenia is okay. I've seen frustration about Waterfowl Dance and how she shouldn't have uncancelable moves, since they allow her to cancel her weakness to poise. Since she doesn't use Kick that often, Kick being the only uncancelable moves where its uncancelability really matters, it doesn't really matter to me. Waterfowl Dance then becomes the real point of debate, and here I can also defend the design almost entirely. Waterfowl Dance is flawed, but not that much. I think if the developers added more startup to the move, or reduce how far Malenia dashes at the start, that will solve all the issues. Because that way, running away from the first flurry would be a reliable strategy that wouldn't require you adapting your build, something that most likely shouldn't be necessary. To summarize, increase Waterfowl's startup. That's all. That's all the only change this boss needs. So, thanks for listening to my most likely unhelpful help video on how to beat Malenia. Like, subscribe, hit bell if you want to. And with that said, I wish you all a very pleasant evening.